Today, a direct flight from Tokyo to Copenhagen takes about 13 hours. But in 1947, making that exact same trip meant spending over 50 hours in the air, zigzagging across South Asia, down through the Middle East, and across the Mediterranean. The geometry of a sphere dictates that the shortest distance between Europe and East Asia isn't a horizontal line on a flat map. It's a great circle route pointing straight over the top of the planet. Drawing that shortcut on a map was easy. Actually flying a mid-century passenger plane across the Arctic Ocean was considered a suicide mission. The initial push north was forced by geopolitics. The Iron Curtain closed Soviet and Chinese airspace to Western airlines, leaving the extreme north as the only legal detour. But the Arctic guarded itself. The Earth's north magnetic pole creates fields that render standard aviation compasses useless, stripping pilots of their directional awareness. Navigators couldn't rely on the sky either. For weeks at a time, perpetual polar twilight washes out the stars while keeping the sun hidden just below the horizon, neutralizing celestial navigation. For Scandinavian Airlines System, or SAS, to bridge this gap, they couldn't just build a better plane. They had to find technical workarounds for the basic limitations of their maps and compasses. To solve the magnetic interference, SAS engineers collaborated with Bendix Aviation to scrap magnetic compasses entirely. They replaced them with a high-precision gyro compass that maintained a steady heading regardless of magnetic fields. Yet, even with a stable heading, traditional maps failed them. Near the pole, standard longitude lines converge so sharply that plotting a straight course on paper becomes a mathematical nightmare. The solution was a cartographic hack called the Greenwich grid system. By overlaying a square grid with artificial parallel lines onto polar charts, navigators could finally plot readable trajectories. Overcoming the math and the magnetism was only half the battle. They still needed a way to find the invisible sun to verify their position. The answer came in the form of a new instrument called the sky compass, designed to detect the polarization of scattered light in the atmosphere. Even when the sun sits hidden below the curvature of the Earth during polar twilight, the light it emits still hits the atmosphere directly overhead and scatters. Because that scattered light is polarized, it hits at an exact 90-degree angle to the sun itself. By measuring that angle, pilots secured a reliable directional fix. 900 years earlier, Viking captains used this exact same physics principle to navigate these waters. Without complex machinery, Norse sailors used natural cordierite crystals. When held up to a foggy sky, the stone would change color based on the polarized light, revealing the sun's position. SAS pilots were conquering the 20th century Arctic using synthetic versions of their ancestors' 11th century technology. All of this preparation culminated on February 24, 1957. A DC-7C named the Guttorm Viking departed Copenhagen, while a second plane, the Radar Viking, departed Tokyo. After hours of navigating through the twilight, the two aircraft managed to perfectly convene directly over the North Pole. They safely landed in Anchorage, Alaska for a technical refueling stop, shaving 18 hours and thousands of miles off the journey. This single operation proved the Arctic was a viable commercial corridor, cutting nearly 20 hours off a trip that once dominated an entire week of travel. SAS broke the monopoly on intercontinental routing. Airlines around the world quickly adopted the gyro compass and the Greenwich grid to push their own flights across the ice. The influx of traffic hit Alaska hard. Almost overnight, Anchorage transformed into the undisputed crossroads of the world for international passenger transit. That geographic advantage lasted until the 1990s. The end of the Cold War finally opened up Russian airspace, right as manufacturers introduced ultra-long-range jets capable of skipping refueling stops entirely. Anchorage lost its grip on passenger dominance, but its location remained so central to the Northern Hemisphere that the airport successfully pivoted, rebuilding itself into a massive global air cargo hub. Geographical bottlenecks and global hubs are never permanent. They are dictated by the politics and technology of their era. That cycle continues today. Following the closures of Russian airspace in 2022, airlines have been forced to dust off old charts and rethink these mid-century polar routes. borders shift and navigation tools evolve from crystals to satellites, but the geometry of the sphere is fixed. When traditional paths close, the shortcut over the pole remains exactly where it was in 1957, waiting for the next innovation to make it accessible again.